Blood was pooling under her body faster than I could stop it, and every second I hesitated meant 1 second closer to watching a princess die in my arms. My name is Kale Reyes, and 3 hours earlier, I was standing guard duty on a diplomatic convoy, half asleep, counting down the minutes until my shift ended. Then the sky above the convoy split open with weapons fire, and everything I thought I knew about a quiet posting burned away in an instant. The attack came from nowhere. Ships dropped out of hidden cover and tore into the royal convoy of the Nocturnari, the ancient species that fed on the rich energy carried in blood, a species that had looked down on humans since the day we joined the Galactic Council. Their guards fell fast, their medics fell faster. By the time I reached the wreckage of the lead transport, most of the royal escort was already dead or dying, and lying in the middle of the wreckage was a woman who looked barely alive. Her skin was pale beyond pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were half open, unfocused, searching for something that wasn't coming. I knelt beside her and pressed my hand against the wound in her side, and her guards, the few still breathing, shouted at me to step back, that I was not compatible, that human touch alone could kill her faster. But there was no one else. No Nocturnari medic close enough, no compatible donor in range, nothing but silence crackling over the comms and the sound of her breathing growing thinner by the second. I made the decision before I let myself think it through. I pulled the emergency blade from my belt, opened a line across my own forearm, and pressed my arm against the wound at her side, letting my blood flow directly into her. I want to tell you it was a calm, brave decision. It wasn't. It was instinct. Humans don't calculate the odds when someone is dying in front of us. We just move. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her whole body arched, and a sound left her throat that wasn't quite pain and wasn't quite relief. Her eyes snapped fully open, locking onto mine with a kind of shock I had never seen on any face, human or alien. Her guards went pale, which for the Nocturnari, already pale by nature, was a frightening thing to witness. One of them grabbed my shoulder and dragged me back, shouting orders I didn't understand, but I could see the wound at her side closing faster than any medical scanner should allow. Her strength was returning in front of us, not slowly, but in a rush, like something in my blood had lit a fire under her recovery. I remember thinking, in the middle of the chaos, that I had just done something no manual had prepared me for. The medics arrived soon after, and I was pulled aside, questioned, and eventually released back to my unit, with strict orders to say nothing about what happened. My commanding officer, a steady man named Elliot Marsh, told me flatly that I had crossed a line that wasn't mine to cross, that interspecies blood transfer without approval was against every treaty we had signed, and that the fallout could cost humanity its seat on the council. I didn't understand the size of what I had done until 2 days later, when I was summoned to the royal quarters aboard the Nocturnari flagship. The princess, whose name I learned was Vexthara, was sitting upright for the first time since the attack, wrapped in dark ceremonial cloth, her advisors standing stiffly around her, like she was a fragile artifact rather than a person. When I walked in, she looked at me the way someone looks at a puzzle they can't solve. An older Nocturnari woman, sharp-eyed and clearly in a position of authority, stepped forward and explained what I had done in terms far heavier than I expected. Among her people, blood given freely at the edge of death was not simple medicine. It was a bond, a tether, recognized by their oldest laws as an unbreakable connection between the giver and the one who received it. It wasn't romance, it wasn't ownership. It was something closer to a vow neither of us had agreed to, but both of us were now bound by. I stood there feeling the weight of every word land on me like stone. The advisors wanted it undone. There were rituals, they said, ways to sever a tether if both parties agreed, methods that had been used before in rare accidents. They looked at me, expecting relief, expecting me to jump at the chance to walk away from a bond I never asked for. I looked at Vexthara, expecting the same expression, expecting her to want this gone as much as they did. Instead, she said no. Her voice was quiet but firm, the kind of quiet that silences a room faster than shouting ever could. She told her advisors that the tether would remain, that she had chosen it in the moment her life was ending, and that she would not undo the one thing that had kept her breathing when everyone she trusted had failed to reach her in time. The room went cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. I was dismissed shortly after, sent back to my unit with no clear answers, only a growing unease that I was now tangled in politics far above my rank. Word spread fast through the convoy, and not kindly. Rival Nocturnari houses saw opportunity in the scandal, whispering that the princess had been weakened, that her judgment was compromised, that a bond to a human commoner made her unfit to lead when her time came. My own command wasn't much kinder. There was talk of reassigning me quietly, shipping me somewhere far from the convoy before the situation became a full diplomatic incident. Some officers were more worried about what my blood had done to her, the unexpected strength of the reaction, wondering out loud if human blood carried properties that could be studied, replicated, or worse, exploited. I didn't like being talked about like a resource. I liked even less that no one was asking Vexthara what she actually wanted. Over the following days, I was called back to the royal quarters more than once, officially for medical monitoring, since my blood was still the only known compatible donor source that had stabilized her condition long-term. Unofficially, I think she asked for me because she didn't trust anyone else in that ship to speak to her honestly. She wasn't what I expected. The first time we spoke without her advisors hovering nearby, she asked me why I had done it, why I hadn't hesitated the way every survival instinct should have told me to. I told her the truth. I didn't have time to calculate anything. I saw someone dying and I moved. She sat with that answer longer than I expected. She told me that in her whole life, surrounded by advisors, guards, and a house built on centuries of careful calculation, no one had ever done something for her without weighing the cost first. Every gift she had ever received came with a price attached, a favor expected in return, a political angle hidden underneath. What I had done had no angle, no plan, just instinct. I started to understand, slowly, that the thing making humans look reckless to older species like hers wasn't a flaw. It was something they had trained out of themselves generations ago, and something she had never been allowed to experience until the day a stranger bled onto her wound without asking permission first. The tension around the convoy kept building. The rival house pushing the loudest against her, led by a cold, calculating lord named Draven Ashcombe, demanded a formal hearing to challenge her fitness to inherit her family's position, using the tether as proof that she had been compromised. The hearing was called faster than I expected, held in the main chamber of the flagship with representatives from half a dozen allied and rival houses watching. I was ordered to attend as a witness, and my own commanding officer warned me to stay silent, unless directly questioned, reminding me that one wrong word could tip an already fragile diplomatic balance. Draven spoke first, laying out his case with practiced precision, painting the tether as an accident that revealed weakness rather than survival. He argued that a bond to a human, a species barely a decade into galactic society, made her judgment suspect and her position unstable. When it was her turn to answer, Vexthara stood without hesitation. She didn't defend herself with legal technicalities or ancient precedent. She simply told the chamber what had happened, plainly, without flinching. She described the attack, the silence on the comms, the guards too weak to help her, and the human soldier who acted without being asked, without expecting anything in return. She said that if choosing to survive, and choosing to honor the bond that saved her, made her unfit to lead, then perhaps the standard itself was broken, not her. The chamber stayed silent for a long moment. Then she turned toward me, and for the first time since the attack, she asked me directly, in front of every house present, whether I stood by the tether or wished it undone. I felt every eye in that chamber land on me, waiting. I thought about Elliot Marsh's warning, about the treaties, about the danger of speaking out of turn in a room full of ancient power. Then, I thought about the moment on that transport, her eyes locking onto mine, and the simple fact that I still didn't regret a single second of that choice. I told the chamber that I stood by it, that I hadn't given my blood to gain anything, and I wasn't about to take it back now, because it made powerful people uncomfortable. Draven's expression tightened, but he had nothing left to argue against a bond acknowledged openly by both sides in front of witnesses. The chamber's ruling came quickly after that, confirming the tether as valid under their oldest laws, closing the door on any challenge to her position. Vexthera didn't smile. Not exactly, but something in her posture loosened for the first time since I had met her. Walking out of that chamber, I understood that my life had changed in a way I couldn't undo. Humanity now had an unexpected, permanent presence inside one of the oldest and most guarded houses in the galaxy, and it was because one soldier refused to stand by and watch someone die without doing something about it. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't ask for a bond, a title, or a place at that table. All I did was give a stranger a reason to keep breathing. Sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.